is sponsored by DeMayo Law Offices, representing Carolinians since 1992. Live from Charlotte, this is WBTV News, on your side.
Now at 6, a tropical storm off the coast of the Carolinas. Tropical storm Danny bringing rain and rip currents. There's also a first alert for our area later in the week. We're on your side with what this could mean for your July 4th holiday plans.
Plus, a WBTV investigation into reported rapes and assaults at Myers Park High School has prompted more women to come forward.
It was like reading my own story. It really hit hard.
Tonight, we are hearing from more former students who are calling on school leaders to take action. Good evening and welcome to WBTV News at 6 o'clock. I'm Jamie Bold.
And I'm Maureen O'Boyle. It is nice to have you with us on this Monday. More women coming forward tonight to talk about their experience reporting rape and sexual assault at Myers Park High School with, they say, virtually nothing happening.
WBTV's chief investigative reporter Nick Oxner was first to uncover this story, reporting on 2 lawsuits filed against the school district. And he is continuing to press for answers now.
When you saw our story about the 2 other former students who'd reported being assaulted at Myers Park, what'd you think?
It was like reading my own story. It really hit hard.
Serena Evans reported being raped after school on campus one day in October 2016.
I just remember the look in his eyes. I knew that if I fought him, I might get hurt. So my body just shut down. I just kind of dissociated. I was like, it's better to just do what he says than end up in the hospital or in a coma or something.
She was a freshman tennis player getting ready for a match after school.
After it happened, he left the bathroom. I curled over the toilet. I thought I was just gonna throw up everywhere.
She says she got dressed for a tennis match and tried to play, but couldn't. 3 days later, she told her mom she'd been raped. They called police and notified school administrators.
I was told if I pursue this and he's found not guilty, I would get in trouble for being in the boys' bathroom, and I might get suspended for that.
When you walked out of that meeting, did you feel like anyone believed you at the school?
No, I still don't feel like anyone believes me at the school. And it's been 5 years.
The entire time they had been questioning me, they had said things like, do you have a crush on this person? Is there anything you want to admit? They just constantly were reinforcing this idea that I was lying to them. And, you know, over time, I started, I almost started to believe it. And I really felt like, I was doing something wrong.
This former student, who graduated just a few weeks ago, reported being repeatedly sexually assaulted by another student on the school bus in 2018. When she told her mom, they called police, who called the school. But nothing happened.
I remember after everything had been settled and the administrator was going to submit the report, he turned to me and he said, after I do this, everything will be final. Is there anything you want to admit to me before I turn this in? And I told him no, and he submitted it, and that was the end of it. And I just left there feeling so helpless and so embarrassed.
She says she was so traumatized by her experience in 2018, she didn't tell school administrators about a second assault the following year. She sent this email last year to a CMS email address disclosing both assaults, but didn't get a response until last week.
It's not about me. It's about CMS and Myers Park were being selfish.
When your daughter first told you that she'd been sexually assaulted, what went through your mind?
I was shocked, I was appalled, and I wanted her to know that I was taking this very seriously.
Do you feel like anyone else took this seriously?
No, not at all.
Should parents feel comfortable sending their children to school at Myers Park?
We should. Absolutely we should. Do we? No, not at all.
Hey, Superintendent Winston. Hey, Superintendent.
Sir?
For more than a month, WBTV's tried to ask school leaders about the claims by women who say the reports of rape and sexual assault were mishandled.
And we can't get any answer or response from the school system.
Earlier this month, Superintendent Ernest Winston wouldn't even acknowledge our questions when we showed up in person. That silence has continued as we renewed our request for this story.
As you've watched the school remain silent, and Superintendent Ernest Winston stay silent, and School Board Chairwoman Elise Deshoe stay silent, what does their silence say to you?
That victims don't matter, that rape isn't a real thing, that it's not important, that we don't matter.
Neither CMS nor the school board have issued any statement since posting one on Facebook and deleting that an hour later earlier this month. But Myers Park Principal Mark Bosco sent students and staff an email last week saying in part, quote, over the past few weeks, there's been information shared through social media in reaction to a news report about Myers Park High School focused on safety concerns in school administration response. Schools are always constrained in commenting on news reports due to the importance of student confidentiality. I do want to emphasize how much I and the entire staff at Myers Park High School care about our students. Now, Jamie, I'll join you at 7:30 for On Your Side tonight, where we'll line up interviews with all 5 former students that we've talked with who all recount their similar experiences reporting being raped and sexually assaulted at Myers Park High School and the responses they got from administrators.
We will see you at 7:30. Nick, thank you.
Okay, they could provide insight into what the city's top leaders are doing, and they're supposed to belong to you.
But tonight, a WBTV investigation is pulling back the curtain on the refusal by the city of Charlotte to respond to hundreds of records requests. Investigative reporter David Hodges is looking at what records the city does not want you to see and pushing for answers on why they are not following the law.
When someone at the city of Charlotte hits send on an email, they're writing a message to more than just the recipient. That's because nearly all communication from city employees and elected leaders are subject to the state's public records law.
It sheds light onto some of these conversations that we're not always privy to at public-facing meetings like city council.
Katie Peralta-Soloff is a reporter at Axios Charlotte. She's among the many people listed as having filed a records request for emails of city leaders, and she's among the many who end up waiting a very long time for a response.
It's, sort of just an assumption a lot of the time that you're not going to get these records.
WBTV analyzed nearly 200 requests for emails, text messages, and other records sent to the city of Charlotte since January 2019. Less than half have been completed, mostly related to real estate or zoning. The rest remain outstanding or at least partially unfulfilled. Of the requests that remain outstanding, many of them are related to economic deals between the city and private companies. The data shows those take the longest to see the light of day.
Essentially, that is taxpayer money that they're playing with. So the public has a right to know how their money is being spent.
Records analyzed by WBTV show there have been 48 requests for emails from City Manager Marcus Jones. Just 10 have been fulfilled. There are 24 requests for emails from Assistant City Manager and Economic Development Director Tracy Dodson. 3 have been fulfilled. 12 requests for emails from city leaders asked for the keyword Tepper, as in Panthers owner David Tepper. None have been fulfilled, even though some of those requests date back to 2019. We reached out to Charlotte City Council members about the ongoing issue with record requests. Mayor Pro Tem Julie Eisel emailed us back, pointing out that some of the requests lack specificity, which adds time to do the searches. But it would be reasonable to give a response as to when it is anticipated that a request could be fulfilled. So far, other council members have not responded. We also asked the city's communication staff why it takes so long for records to be produced. In an email response, spokesperson Corey Burkhardt did not answer the vast majority of questions that we asked, and nowhere in the entirety of the response was the issue of records requests for emails addressed. The city said it has improved in providing timely records and showed data of completed responses, but none of it specific to emails. The outstanding requests include records related to some of the most important events to happen in Charlotte over the past 2 years, including the deal to bring Major League Soccer to the Queen City, the incident where protesters were trapped by tear gas and the Republican National Convention. Even though the law requires those records to be provided as promptly as possible, we're still waiting for more information. In Charlotte, David Hodges, WBTV, on your side.
TV investigation continues into programs that advertise themselves as offering wilderness therapy for kids and teens.
Last month, Chief Investigative Reporter Nick Ochsner told you about one program in Western North Carolina where one participant described what she experienced as abuse. At the time, we had questions for the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, the agency charged with regulating these facilities, but they refused to answer. That changed after our first story ran.
Trails Carolina's website advertises a long list of therapeutic offerings aimed at helping struggling children and teens, including therapy, group therapy, even wellness programming.
There's no real therapy that happens.
Kathleen Riley went to Trails in 2012. We spoke with her last month about her experience.
So you spend most of the time in the woods.
Yes.
With people who aren't trained therapists.
No.
But who are deciding what you're doing every day.
Mm-hmm.
And they call that therapy?
Yeah, part of the process, part of the program.
What would you call it?
Abuse.
And former staff member Jonathan Hyde, who worked as a wilderness guide last summer at Trails, cast doubt on the program too.
Plenty of times where we both had to, 2 out of, the 3 staff had to go focus on one individual. The question of supervision there, effective supervision comes into question.
Hyde says he got just 3 days of training.
If I was a parent, I'd be pretty pissed to find out what the actual therapy that happens.
Trails Carolina is one of just 3 wilderness therapy programs licensed in the state, regulated by the Department of Health and Human Services. DHHS refused to answer our questions about what the agency does to ensure participants are getting safe, effective therapy the program advertises.
Recording in progress.
But that changed last week.
This setting, except for the fact it's in the wilderness, is not that different than other facilities that also deal with high-risk youth.
So you don't think that being in the woods with a tent and no running water, you don't think that's different than a child being at a therapeutic setting on a campus somewhere?
So I think regardless of whether the child is in a therapeutic setting at a campus or in the woods, in a tent, in a very primitive setting, I think both are situations where, the youth are high risk.
Emery Milliken is Deputy Director of DHHS's Division of Health Service Regulation, which inspects trails and thousands of other licensed facilities in the state. The law requires DHHS to inspect trails every 12 to 15 months. But records show the agency has sometimes gone longer. DHHS did not visit trails at all in 2017 or 2020. DHHS says it suspended inspections due to COVID. But a former staff member says Trails was busier than ever last year.
We are looking to determine whether or not a facility is complying with those regulations, which, if they are, should mean that children are getting the therapy that they need in a safe and appropriate environment.
Yeah, but we've heard from multiple participants at Trails Carolina that said they didn't get the therapy they need. So you're saying that we're making sure they're getting the therapy. We're hearing from people who've been through the program saying we didn't get the therapy. Those two things don't add up.
So whenever we receive a complaint that either a facility is, not performing as expected, or if there are allegations of abuse or neglect or of lack of quality in the care, that's something we want to hear about.
But what is DHHS actually doing to ensure that children in the woods are being properly cared for and getting the treatment they're supposed to get outside of looking at a treatment plan and showing up every 14 months? Is DHHS doing anything else to make sure that these children are actually safe?
Certainly, Nick, you have to respect the fact that we don't actually run these facilities. These are not our facilities.
No, but you license them.
We're not in charge of the operation of the facility.
No, but you license them.
We are a regulator. I'm sorry, I was trying to finish. So yes, we do license them. And meanwhile, we have rules and laws that we're required to follow in our regulation and oversight of the facility. And so that's what we do.
But you can't actually tell me what you do to make sure children who are out in the woods are actually safe.
I think I did just tell you that.
Reporting in Charlotte, Nick Oxner, WBTV, on your side.
We have posted more of that interview online. You can watch now and see our previous reporting on Trails Carolina online, also at WBTV.com.
This seems like a
serious questions about whether Charlotte City Council officials misled residents about the cost of the city's massive transportation plan. The city rolled out the plan earlier this year, but quickly shelved it after mixed reaction to a proposed 1-cent sales tax to pay for it. Now the new emails obtained by WBTV investigative reporter David Hodges shows city staff withheld information and underestimated the plan's cost by billions of dollars.
Long before the 2040 plan took control of the public dialogue, Charlotte's transformational mobility network was the big talker in town. The TMN was a plan to improve Charlotte's buses, sidewalks, greenways, and light rail by introducing a new countywide 1-cent sales tax to pay for it.
There is zero enthusiasm for this plan in District 1.
I've publicly stated I wouldn't support it under any circumstances.
But opposition from northern parts of Mecklenburg County caused a reset. Just before the plan went back to the drawing board, City Manager Marcus Jones said this.
So we are refining our legislative ask and also refining the financial assumptions.
Financial assumptions is just government speak for costs. The projected cost presented so far was anywhere between $8 and $12 billion. After Jones' comment, we decided to file a record request for emails from Planning Director Taiwo Jayoba and Chief Financial Officer Kelly Flannery to find out what that real cost was. After months of waiting and calling out the city for how long it takes to produce emails, we finally received some of them. The first one that stood out was this one from Special Assistant to the City Manager Sean Heath. He wrote, quote, the $8 to $12 billion range from the task force report is just capital costs. When taking operating and financing costs into account, I believe the 30-year all-in is more along the lines of $20 billion.
We all know that when we have estimates from government, it always tends to be a lot higher. And the question is, how do you pay for these things?
We took our findings to Huntersville Mayor John Anarala, who was one of the most outspoken critics of the plan.
The devil's in the details, and we still haven't received all the details.
We tried getting those details and an explanation about this new cost from Heath and Jayoba after a recent city council meeting.
Is this not a little bit misleading to what the public's been told so far?
Actually not. So internally, we had dialogues, not just with ourselves, but also with the Chief Financial Officer and also our Director of Transportation, Transit, and say, okay, what works and what doesn't?
Is that still the cost y'all are projecting right now?
So that wasn't really a formal analysis on my part, just really our first opportunity to start peeling back the onion associated with the task force report and asking questions about the assumptions and the estimates.
Email showed there was a lot of internal dialogue among city staff, and some of it raised questions about whether city officials were fully transparent with council, other towns, and the public. In one email, Flannery wrote she would prefer to share new financial assumptions they had discussed, but her plan was thwarted by the city manager, Marcus Jones. She wrote, quote, until we know what we're doing on the city side, it is irresponsible and a waste of time to contemplate external components. The manager would like a call with the group for me to share our existing model. She wrote she would comply in the spirit of following directions. In an email, city manager Marcus Jones responded that early in the process, quote, we realized that the initial estimates for both the potential costs and potential revenues were likely low. Rather than rush out a new set of estimates, I decided that it would be more productive to wait and ensure staff had enough time to do their work so that we feel confident in the numbers and strategies we use moving forward. City staff will be presenting some of this internal work to City Council next week, including the total cost estimate, which is potentially billions more than what had previously been discussed.
Do you think the number you present potentially on Monday is going to be wildly different than that?
It's not going to be widely different. I wouldn't say that.
Reporting in Charlotte, David Hodges, WBTV, on your side.
Single parents struggling to make ends meet have been left in limbo during the pandemic by a court system that has all but shut down and won't hear their child support cases. Now, WBTV's chief investigative reporter Nick Oxner is asking court leaders why these hearings aren't being held.
Jasmine McIntyre and her 11-year-old son TJ have spent a lot of time together since the start of the pandemic.
You made me shuffle my good cards away.
Most of it in this 2-bedroom apartment.
I'm
waiting on my child support payments. The case has been in arrears basically since it was started.
McIntyre says TJ's father owes more than $7,000 in past due child support, but she can't go a judge to enforce it because until recently, Mecklenburg County hadn't scheduled new cases for months.
I said I wanted a court date, and I've yet to get that court date. It's been since October, and they're telling me that court's not in session, that court's not closed.
McIntyre's son is on the spectrum. He was in therapy, but that had to stop when McIntyre couldn't afford the office visits. She also had to move from a townhouse into the subsidized apartment she's in now.
I'm sure, because you're here, that I'm not the only person that's going through this. But it's good to know that we have someone like you that's here to help us get through it.
I called you because the Mecklenburg County Child Support has indicated that the child support amount should be increased. However, they've not enforced that.
Chris Strobel can't get help either. Mecklenburg County Child Support Enforcement ruled last year that since she got sick and had to stop working, the child support payment she gets to take care of her son should double. But her son's father's contested that, which means a judge has to decide. She got this letter from Child Support Enforcement saying they can't schedule a hearing until court resumes.
Has anyone given you any idea when court hearings might resume?
No. I saw it with the caseworker who's handling my case, and he indicated that they keep getting pushed back and back and back. So initially, I was told there would be a hearing in November. Well, that was pushed back, and then it was January. Now it's February, and I spoke with the caseworker recently, and he said that all court hearings for February have been canceled, and nothing else has been scheduled. And I've been waiting 6 months for a court hearing.
Strobel's son was in a small private school for children with different learning needs. She had to take him out because she couldn't afford it anymore.
It's making it very stressful. I mean, I have to sacrifice, which any parent would sacrifice for their child, but I'm having to really sacrifice in order to provide for my son's needs, and his father should be also paying that to help take care of him.
And the fix is simple, right?
The fix is simple. Hold the hearing. Enforce what you've already said should happen.
Child support hearing stopped last March and didn't resume until August. A court spokeswoman refused to answer questions for this story on camera, but said in a statement that it was not in charge of scheduling child support hearings. A spokesman for the county said the Child Support Enforcement Office schedules the hearings, but can only use dates and times provided by the court. This chart, provided by Child Support Enforcement, shows the court has been hearing a couple hundred cases each month, which translates to just a handful of cases every day.
Do you think that anyone in the court system, the Child Support Enforcement, anyone in Raleigh, do you think anyone's thinking about the well-being of your son?
They can't be, because if you look at the account, like I said, it's over $7,600 in arrears. We haven't had a court date. This is just a continuing situation. And if we can't go to court to be heard, then how is it going to be enforced?
Reporting in Charlotte, Nick Oxner, WBTV, on your side.
Charlotte is spending tens of thousands of your tax dollars, Jamie, to help find ways to get along better.
And all of it used for team building among city leaders. Now WBTV investigative reporter David Hodges is asking city leaders what they're getting for your money. New at 6.
Most companies have been through team building exercises before, and Charlotte City Council is no different. But in their case, they drew up this contract worth tens of thousands of dollars to make it happen, even though some of the things in this contract never came to pass. It's no secret that Charlotte City Council members sometimes have trouble getting along.
I sent a text message to everybody Saturday morning saying, you guys, we got to come up with a process. This is a council process.
Take, for example, when council had to appoint a new member in February, and Mayor Pro Tem Julie Eisel said she had tried to organize council members to come up with a process, but received little response.
We've got to be willing to talk to each other and not disparage each other. We have to act as a council.
But even before that, Mayor Vi Lyles and council members had been working to address these issues. In November, the city signed a contract with Ernst & Young, known as EY, titled High Performing Charlotte City Council. The idea was to conduct interviews with council members, lead group discussions, and ultimately help council communicate better and embrace each other's perspectives. The cost? $46,500.
Well, it was an idea that I thought
Needed discussion. And I believe that working with the council, we all wanted to be the best and highest performing council possible.
Mayor Vi Lyles agreed to answer questions about why she thought spending that money would be good for taxpayers. The contract states that EY would develop final recommendations in a supporting action plan and present relevant material to council during the annual strategic retreat January 11th.
One of the areas that I personally specialize in is in high-performing teaming and executive support.
But outside of a 40-minute presentation on a high-performing council provided during that meeting, it's not clear any other recommendations have been provided. Have you gotten any of those results yet?
We continue to think about how do we do this work. So the results, I don't think that we're looking for a result in terms of the end. I think we're still thinking about how do we continuously focus on what the priorities are, or what are the traits that we're looking for a high-performing council.
Will we be hearing more from you about, how well we actually do when it comes to buying into a shared vision and working together in those things?
Does that still exist in this contract?
My understanding is that as we continue our work with EY, they continue to bring us benchmark other councils and other ideas of where people are doing great work. And many times in government, we have a final report. Learning is never just final.
While a city spokesperson says there's been no change in the scope of work, WBTV has learned some aspects of the contract have changed. Council members took part in one-on-one interviews with EY and small group discussions with each other, but not every council member participated. WBTV also learned that a plan to get council members to provide feedback on other council members was scrapped because it would be subject to a public records request. Lyles told me that EY has yet to submit an invoice for the $46,500 contract, so the city hasn't paid any money yet. Do you believe the contract was ultimately worth that for city council?
Do I believe this is of value? Yes.
In Charlotte, David Hodges, WBTV, on your side.
New tonight, a WBTV investigation into how your tax dollars are spent by the city of Charlotte has now turned into a lawsuit. For months, the city has refused to turn over records requested by WBTV. Now we've uncovered new information that shows the city destroyed some of those records. This all stems from a series of stories from our investigative reporter, David Hodges. He's tried to figure out how the city is spending your money to help city council get along.
We filed this complaint against the city of Charlotte requesting that surveys your city council members filled out be turned over to the public. So far, the city has refused to do that. This all started earlier this year when we reported that the city had entered into a $46,000 contract with the consulting firm Ernst & Young to help council members work more effectively together. At this point, it's well documented the struggle some council members have had in getting along. During our reporting, we learned that council members filled out surveys about their job performance as well as their thoughts on other council members. But the city has refused to hand over those records, saying they're in the possession of Ernst & Young. During our battle for the records, we also learned that at least one council member's survey responses were ordered destroyed by City Attorney Patrick Baker after the city decided not to have council members fill out the detailed portion of the planned survey. This lawsuit is about continuing the fight for public records and making sure we track how your tax dollars are being spent, and we'll continue to give you updates as we keep pushing for transparency. In Charlotte, David Hodges, WBTV, on your side.